Welcome back to The Deep Dive. Today we're tackling, well, quite a stack of your source material. We've got personal systems, high-level investment finance, even urban history and market psychology. It's a lot.
It really is. We're trying to synthesize it all into, let's call it a blueprint for mastery.
Yeah, a blueprint. Because we're crossing a lot of different fields today, and the idea is to connect the dots.
That's right. We're not just giving you, quick tips. The sources argue that real long-term success, especially somewhere crowded like real estate, it rests on two big things.
Oh, okay, what are they?
First, a really solid personal system, call it the inner game. And second, sharp, detailed knowledge about finance, the market, its history, the outer game.
Inner game, outer game. Got it. So the big question we're asking with all this material is, how do you stop being just another face in the crowd?
Exactly. If you're one agent among thousands or one investor, how do you get an edge that isn't just, well, luck or riding a temporary wave?
And the sources suggest the answer starts maybe unexpectedly, not with the market itself.
Right. It starts inside your own head with mastering your own systems.
Okay, let's unpack that inner game then, because you said the sources are pretty clear on this. Changing your behavior isn't just about the result.
Not primarily, no. It's actually more about changing who you believe you are. It's about reinforcing the identity you want to build.
That feels like a really key distinction, changes everything, motivation-wise.
It does. Think about it. If you try to, say, run a mile today and you don't make it, you feel like a failure, right?
Yeah, probably. Discouraged.
But the sources argue the value of tiny actions, like reading for just 1 minute, isn't the immediate knowledge gain. That 1 minute is like casting a vote.
A vote? For what?
A vote for being the kind of person who is a reader, or an exerciser, or someone who's disciplined with their finances.
Ah, I see. So each tiny action reinforces the identity.
Precisely. And if you cast enough of those votes, the thinking goes, you actually start to change your core beliefs about yourself. That identity shift is the real prize.
Okay, so how do you make that happen systematically?
Well, the sources boil it down to what they call the 4 laws of behavior change. You need to make the habit obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying.
Obvious, attractive, easy, satisfying. Okay. Which ones are most critical to start?
I think the practical side of making it obvious and easy is where people often stumble first. Like, making it obvious means ditching vague goals.
Like, I need to follow up more.
Exactly. That's too fuzzy. It won't stick. The sources push for using implementation intentions. You get really specific.
Give me an example.
Instead of follow up more, it's when I sit down at my desk right after lunch, the first thing I will do is spend 30 minutes calling past clients. Specific time, specific location, specific action.
Okay, that makes sense. It removes the guesswork.
And then there's habit stacking. You attach the new habit you want to build onto something you already do automatically.
Like brushing your teeth.
Sure. If you want to spend, say, 15 minutes analyzing a new market area, you could stack it. After I pour my morning coffee, I will immediately review the new listings in the North End. You use that existing coffee habit as the trigger.
So you're leveraging existing routines, and the environment matters too, right?
Oh, hugely. The sources stress that stability in your environment is key. If your workspace is chaos, your attempts at systemization will likely be chaotic too.
Okay, let's connect this systematic thinking to the job itself, like sales. For a real estate agent, the sources say something interesting about what you're really selling. It's not the property.
Nope. It's your time. Think about it. The commission rate, your price for service, is often kind of fixed, or at least under pressure, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So the only real lever you have to boost your profit and efficiency is mastering your time. And that means you have to be almost ruthless in evaluating every single thing you do.
Ruthless. How so?
By constantly asking yourself 2 questions about any activity. 1, am I getting paid my target hourly rate for doing this? And 2, if not, can I get someone else to do this?
Okay. Am I getting paid X and can someone else do it? That forces you to confront low-value tasks.
Exactly. It's the antidote to busy work. Spending hours on tasks that feel urgent but don't actually contribute much to your bottom line or your core value proposition.
Like what kind of tasks?
Could be anything.
Right.
Maybe spending hours tweaking a flyer design when you could use a template, or driving across town to drop off keys when a courier service could do it for a few bucks. Or maybe coordinating staging details that an assistant or the stager themselves could handle.
Right. Freeing you up for the high-value stuff.
Like negotiating deals, prospecting, or really deepening client relationships.
But hang on. Let's push on that. What if you're brand new? You probably don't have the cash flow to just outsource everything you don't like doing, even if it is technically low value. How do the sources address that reality?
That's a really fair point.
Yeah.
And the sources don't necessarily say you must outsource immediately. The audit framework is also about eliminating tasks altogether if they don't truly move the needle.
Okay, so prune first.
Yeah, prune first. Or systemize it. Figure out how to do that necessary but low-value task in 10 minutes instead of an hour. For the new agent, the audit helps ensure that if you work 10 hours, maybe 8 of those are genuinely focused on things that generate leads or serve clients directly, not just spinning your wheels on admin.
So it's about being intentional with the time you do have, even if you can't afford help yet.
Exactly. Purposeful allocation of your limited resources, including your own time.
Okay, that makes sense. And that focus on high leverage work brings us to follow-up. The sources really hammer this point home. Persistence matters.
Oh, absolutely. There's this great anecdote in the material about a huge sale, like a $17 million apartment.
Wow.
Yeah. And the client apparently felt like the deal just kind of happened. Effortless. Quick.
The dream scenario.
Right. But the agent involved, they revealed that the quick deal was actually the result of more than 5 years of what they called classic, well-executed follow-up.
5 years. So it wasn't luck at all.
Not even close. It wasn't aggressive hounding either. It was consistent, value-driven communication over a very long time. Just staying top of mind as the trusted resource.
And that ties into the whole attitude in sales, doesn't it? Avoiding that pushy stereotype.
Totally. The sources draw a distinction between working for the sale, just trying to close this one transaction, and working for the deal.
What's the difference? Working for the deal means?
It means focusing on the relationship, the long-term trust, the overall reputation. It's about genuine connection. The advice is literally to approach new interactions like you're just talking to new friends.
Okay, be human. Makes sense. And there was something about expectations, too.
Yes, this is fascinating. The sources suggest your internal expectation going into a meeting is almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
How so? Like if I expect a fight on commission.
You're likely to get one because that defensiveness or insecurity, it leaks out. It affects your confidence, your presentation, everything. The sources say you need to project unshakable confidence.
Unshakable. That's a high bar. Where does that come from?
It comes from genuinely believing you are the best option for them, that you offer superior value. It's not arrogance, it's conviction based on your preparation and your commitment to their success.
That focus on value and connection sounds a lot like the go-giver philosophy that was mentioned.
It aligns perfectly.
Yeah.
And the go-giver idea connects to the concept of being a guide, which comes from story brand principles.
Right. The customer isn't looking for another hero.
They're looking for a guide, someone knowledgeable and committed who will help them navigate their journey successfully. You shift the focus from yourself to them.
And the core idea of the go-giver is?
The core law is basically that your influence and ultimately your success is determined by how abundantly you prioritize other people's interests. Put their interests first.
Okay, but let's be real. That sounds nice. Maybe a bit idealistic. If you're always putting the client first, abundantly, aren't you setting yourself up to be taken advantage of? Spending time you don't get paid for. Where's the protection for the agent?
It's a valid concern. The protection, according to the sources, isn't in holding back, it's systemic. It's the long game.
Explain that.
The argument is that by genuinely prioritizing their interests, you build such deep trust, loyalty, and generate so many referrals that this long-term benefit vastly outweighs any occasional short-term loss on a specific interaction or negotiation. The inflow, the success, is seen as an automatic consequence of focusing on the outflow of value.
So it's a belief in reciprocity, essentially, but on a larger scale.
You could say that. It's about building a reputation in a business based on trust, not just transactions.
And this guide mentality, knowing the client's journey, that helps with marketing too.
Oh, massively. The sources say once you truly understand who your customers aspire to be, their desired future identity, you suddenly have the perfect language for all your marketing.
So instead of just listing features.
Right. Instead of, I sell 3-bed, 2-dad houses, your message becomes something like, I help you become a confident homeowner, securing your family's future in the ideal neighborhood. You're tapping into their identity goals.
You're selling the transformation, not just the bricks and mortar.
Exactly. You enable their desired story.
Okay, that's a powerful framework for the inner game and client interaction. Let's shift gears now to the outer game. The investment mechanics, strategy, financial stuff.
Right. Moving into the wealth building side. And the first big principle here from the sources is focus. Ruthless focus.
Mean,
Meaning, the more you zero in on one specific strategy, maybe it's flipping houses, maybe
yeah,
it's long-term rentals, maybe it's small multifamily, or the BRRR method we'll talk about, the better you'll do.
be a big fish in a small pond.
That's the idea. Better to dominate a specific niche or geographical area than to try and be okay at everything everywhere.
Why is that focus so critical in deal making?
Because, fundamentally, any real estate deal needs three core things. The sources call it the deal delta. You need knowledge, you need hustle, and you need money.
Knowledge, hustle, money. Okay.
And almost nobody starts out having all three in abundance. So the deal delta explains why partnerships are so common and so powerful. They exist to fill the gaps.
So if I have the local knowledge and I'm willing to put in the work, the hustle.
Then you find a partner who brings the capital, the money. And together you can do deals that neither of you could do alone. Focus helps you identify your part of the delta and find the right partners for the other parts.
Makes sense. Now, the sources spent a good chunk of time on one specific strategy you mentioned, BRRRR. Can you break that down? Buy, rehab.
Rent, refinance, repeat.
Hmm.
BRRR.
Right. Why is this model supposedly so much better than just, say, buying a rental and holding it?
2 words. Velocity of money.
A velocity of money.
Yeah. Traditional investing, like buying and holding, ties up your initial capital for a long, long time, maybe decades. With BRRR, the magic happens at the refinance step. After you've bought the property, rehabbed it, and rented it out, stabilizing it, its value has hopefully increased significantly. This is the forced equity part. Then you go to a bank and refinance based on that new, higher appraised value, the after repair value, or AOV.
Okay.
And typically, banks will lend you, say, 75% of that new ARV. If you've done the rehab well, that 75% loan might be enough to pay back all of your initial purchase and rehab costs, sometimes even more.
So you pull your original investment back out.
Exactly. Often tax-free because it's loan proceeds, not profit. And now you still own the cash-flowing rental property, but you have your initial capital back in your pocket, ready to deploy into the next BRR deal.
Ah, hence the repeat. You're recycling the same capital much faster.
Much, much faster. That's the acceleration.
The sources gave an example, right?
Right.
Some pretty wild ROI numbers.
They did. Comparing BRRR to traditional buy and hold for a similar property, the traditional method might yield, say, a respectable 14% cash-on-cash return.
Okay.
But the BRRR example in the source showed a return closer to 71%.
71% versus 14. How is that even possible?
It's because of how you calculate the return relative to the money left in the deal. In the BRRR scenario, let's say you put in $50 T initially for purchase and rehab. After refinancing based on the higher ARV, maybe you pull out $50K or even $60K.
So you got all your initial cash back, maybe more.
Right, so now you own the asset, it's generating rental income, but you have zero or even negative cash technically tied up in it from your original investment. Your cash-on-cash return on that initial $50 becomes effectively infinite, or at least astronomically high. The 71% in the example likely relates to the annual return on any small sliver of cash potentially left in, or maybe the return relative to the net equity created. The point is, it blows traditional ROI out of the water because the capital isn't trapped.
That hinges entirely on successfully forcing the equity during the rehab, though.
Absolutely. You mentioned the 2 ways to add value earlier. Buying equity, getting a great deal below market, that's one way. But BRRR relies heavily on forcing equity, actively making the property worth significantly more than your total investment through smart renovations.
And doing that reliably means getting really, really good at estimating rehab costs quickly.
Like scary good.
Yeah.
The sources suggest top investors can walk a property and nail down a budget within 5% accuracy in literally 10 minutes.
10 minutes. How?
Practice, templates, and knowing your numbers cold. Having standardized costs in your head for common items.
Like the examples given. Exterior painting.
Yeah, like knowing that painting a standard 1,500 square foot house exterior, properly prepped, basic quality, is going to land somewhere around $2,000 in your market. Or that removing old siding costs about $50 to $100 per square. That's a 10 by 10 foot area.
Having those benchmarks lets you add things up fast.
Super fast. You're not guessing. You're applying known variables.
Okay, beyond standard financing, what about creative options, especially for maybe rougher properties? Seller financing came up.
Seller financing is huge. It's basically when the person selling you the property also acts as your bank.
Why is that powerful?
Because you bypass the bank's rigid rules entirely. Everything becomes negotiable directly with the seller. The down payment, the interest rate, the repayment term, even when payments are due.
So you could structure a deal that a bank would never approve.
Absolutely. It's perfect for properties that are maybe too run down for conventional loans or have title issues or things like that. Often, those are the properties with the most potential to force equity.
Another technique mentioned was the lease option, but from the owner's side.
Right, the lesser. This is where you rent the property to a tenant, but you also give them the option to buy it later at a set price.
And they pay for that option.
Yes, they pay a non-refundable option fee up front on top of their rent. The sources point out that statistically, most tenant buyers don't end up exercising the option.
So the owner just keeps the option fee.
Yep. And then they could potentially do it again with the next tenant buyer. It becomes another income stream. Plus, crucially, each time they offer a new lease option, they can adjust the potential purchase price upwards to match market appreciation.
Interesting. Multiple bites at the apple. Okay, let's talk about analyzing the numbers and tax implications. There was a quick rule mentioned, the 50% rule.
Yeah, that's a useful back-of-the-napkin tool, especially when you're first looking at a rental property. It's at a rough estimate.
How does it work?
It basically says that, on average, about 50% of your gross rental income will likely go towards operating expenses. That's things like property taxes, insurance, maintenance, repairs, vacancy periods, property management fees, basically everything except your mortgage payment.
So quick math. If a place rents for $2,000 a month, you figure about $1,000 goes to operating expenses, leaving $1,000 for the mortgage payment and potential cash flow.
Exactly. It's a quick sanity check before you dive deeper. Not perfect, but a good starting point.
But for more serious analysis, especially with partners, you need more sophisticated metrics, like IRR.
Definitely. Internal rate of return, equity multiple. These are key. But the sources had a really important warning here about net versus gross.
What's the danger there?
Well, an investment sponsor might show you really attractive gross returns. That's the performance of the property before they take out their fees, profit splits, etc.
Oh, so it looks better than reality.
Potentially, yeah. What you, the investor, actually receive is the net return. If they show you a gross IRR of, say, 18%, but after all their cuts, the net IRR to you is only 12%, well, that's a huge difference.
A third of the profit gone to the sponsor in that case.
Right. So you always need to understand the difference and ask for the net to you projections.
Got it. Let's touch on taxes. Capital gains can take a big bite, especially short term.
Oh, yeah, they can be painful. If you buy and sell an investment property within a short period, usually less than a year, your profit is taxed as ordinary income.
Which can be pretty high rates.
Easily 20, 30, 40, even close to 50%, depending on your overall income. That's why so many serious investors focus on strategies to delay paying taxes.
Like using retirement accounts, IRAs.
Self-directed IRAs, yes.
Yeah.
Or the big one in real estate, the 1031 exchange.
Explain the 1031 quickly.
Sure. Section 131 of the tax code lets you sell an investment property and defer paying capital gains tax on the profit if you reinvest those proceeds into buying another like-kind investment property within a strict set of rules and timelines.
So you keep your money growing without the tax drag each time you sell.
Exactly. It's a massive tool for building wealth over the long term by allowing your gains to compound tax deferred.
And one last point on structure.
Yeah.
Audits. The sources mention certain structures are less likely to be audited.
Yeah, the data cited suggests that properties held in partnerships or S corporations get audited something like 15 to 17 times less often than if you hold them as a sole proprietor.
That's a significant difference.
It really is.
Yeah.
But regardless of structure, the main takeaway is keep meticulous records. Because if you do get audited, the burden of proof is on you, the taxpayer, not the IRS. You have to justify every single deduction. No receipt, no justification. Deduction denied.
Good advice. Okay, we've covered the internal game, the investment mechanics. Now let's zoom out. We need to understand market's context, its history, the systems involved.
Right, because you can't really master a system without understanding how it came to be. We need to look at urban development.
The sources mention suburbanization started way earlier than most people think, not just post-WWII.
Yeah, apparently the seeds were sown way back, like around 1815, in both the U.S. and Britain.
1815. What was driving it back then? No cars, obviously.
It was mostly a reaction against the early industrial city. Noise, pollution, density. People started seeking this idealized middle ground close enough to the city for work or amenities, but far enough out to feel like they were closer to nature, perceived morality, a better family life.
A hybrid life.
Sort of, yeah. Trying to get the best of both worlds.
But the massive shift, the one that really shaped modern America, that was post-World War II.
Oh, absolutely. That's when the economics really kicked in. You had government support, like FHA-insured mortgages,
Yeah.
mass production of housing.
The levee towns.
Exactly. And the crucial financial tipping point mentioned in the sources was when middle-class families realized they could get a mortgage on a brand-new house in the suburbs with a fixed payment
Mhm.
for less money per month than they were paying in rent for a cramped city apartment.
That's a powerful incentive. Cheaper to own than rent.
Huge. That economic reality really locked in the suburban dream for millions.
And we can see these historical layers in the houses themselves, right? The styles tell a story.
They absolutely do. They're like timestamps of culture and wealth. You had American Georgian after 1715, very formal, symmetrical. Then the Federal style from 1780 to 1820, a bit lighter, more refined.
Then later.
Styles like Italianate or American bracketed came in mid-19th century, more ornate, asymmetrical rooflines, brackets under the eaves. And then you have the huge impact of modernism. People like Frank Lloyd Wright completely rethinking the house with his prairie style and later Usonian homes, trying to blend structure with landscape.
But this whole story of suburban growth and changing styles, it's impossible to talk about it honestly without addressing segregation, right? The sources were very direct about this.
Extremely direct. And it wasn't subtle. The sources state plainly that the Federal Housing Administration, the FHA, which insured the mortgages that fueled suburbia, actively worked to protect all white neighborhoods.
How did they do that?
Through their underwriting manuals and policies, they essentially redlined minority neighborhoods, deeming them too risky for investment, and explicitly favored insuring mortgages in racially homogeneous white areas. If a developer wanted FHA backing, they often had to agree not to sell to minorities.
So government policy literally baked segregation into the suburban expansion.
That's what the sources argue, yes. And even when courts started striking down explicitly racist laws, other tools persisted, like restrictive covenants.
Those clauses indeed saying you couldn't sell to certain groups.
Exactly. And the sources point out something important. Even after the Supreme Court said in 1953 that courts couldn't enforce these covenants anymore,
They still had an effect. Why?
because they often remained physically written on the deeds. And the mere presence of that language, even if legally void, created fear and uncertainty for black families or other minority buyers. Would they face harassment? Would the sale be challenged somehow? That chilling effect was enough to discourage many from buying in white neighborhoods, maintaining segregation patterns long after the official legal support was gone.
Understanding that history feels crucial for understanding wealth gaps today.
Absolutely. Where you could buy property, get a mortgage, build equity, that was heavily influenced by these historical systemic factors.
Okay, let's shift one more time to financial systems, risk, and complexity. Drawing lessons from crises like 2008, the sources linked rising income inequality to the subprime boom.
Yes. The idea presented is that as regular wages flattened for many, but housing costs kept rising, there was immense pressure to find ways to qualify more people for mortgages, even if they couldn't meet traditional standards. That opened the door for subprime lending.
And these weren't just slightly riskier loans. They had some nasty features built in.
Very nasty, often predatory features. Things like huge upfront fees hidden in the closing costs, big penalties if you tried to pay off the loan early or refinance, and those infamous teaser interest rates.
Low for a year or two, then they explode upwards.
Right, making the payments suddenly unaffordable.
Hmm.
And the sources also mention negative amortization loans.
Explain that again simply.
Neg-AM meant your required monthly payment wasn't even enough to cover the interest being charged on the loan for that month.
Seriously.
Yes. So the unpaid interest got added back onto your total loan balance. Month after month, you're making payments, but your actual debt is going up, not down. It was a debt trap.
Wow, how did they sell packages of these incredibly risky loans to big investors?
Yeah.
Pension funds and stuff.
Through complexity and opacity, Wall Street wizards bundled these subprime mortgages together, sliced them up into different risk levels, tranches, and then repackaged the riskiest slices into new securities called CDOs, collateralized debt obligations.
Okay.
Sometimes they even created synthetic CDOs, which were basically bets on whether the original CDOs would fail. It got incredibly complicated.
What was the point of all that complexity?
Primarily, the sources argue, to disguise the true level of risk. By mixing garbage loans together and using complex financial models, they could get the rating agencies, Moody's, S&P, to stamp these new CDOs with top ratings, like AAA.
Even though they were flip junk.
Effectively, yes. And that AAA rating was the magic key. It meant that big, conservative institutions like pension funds, which were legally required to only buy highly rated securities, could now buy these things. They were buying hidden risk because the complexity masked it, and the rating gave them cover.
So complexity becomes a tool for hiding risk. And that brings us back to behavior, doesn't it, when things get that complicated?
You have to rely on shortcuts.
Yeah.
Mental shortcuts, rules of thumb, stereotypes. You can't possibly analyze everything from first principles when information is moving that fast, or is that opaque?
It's that click-where automatic response the sources mentioned.
Exactly. It's a necessary survival mechanism for navigating a complex world. But, and this is the crucial but, it makes you vulnerable if you don't critically verify the shortcut or the source of the information you're relying on.
Which leads directly into the final and perhaps most challenging part of the source material. How do you determine what's true when information itself might be compromised or part of a larger agenda?
Right. And again, our role here isn't to endorse or refute, but simply to report on the claims presented in one specific source regarding major global events as an illustration of this challenge.
Okay, so what did this particular source claim about the COVID-19 response?
It made some very strong assertions. It claimed the global response was, in its words, cult-driven and essentially bought and paid for. Meaning it alleged that key figures and organizations driving the response globally had significant funding connections back to a small number of entities, implying a coordinated agenda rather than independent scientific consensus. The source encouraged readers to trace the funding of response leaders in their own countries.
Okay, that's a claim about motivations and systems. What about the science itself?
The source also made specific scientific claims, stating that the virus, SARS-CoV-2, had, quote, never been isolated purified, according to traditional virological standards.
And what did it propose instead?
It asserted that what was being called COVID was, again in its words, actually created by a computer program. The claim was that genetic material from lung fluid samples, which contain many things, was sequenced and then computationally assembled or modeled into the virus, rather than physically isolating a distinct viral particle first.
So alleging the virus itself was a construct based on modeling data.
Yeah, that's the assertion presented. The source also expressed significant concern about the rapid deployment of new vaccine technologies, claiming their long-term effects weren't fully understood and questioning their application across the entire population, especially lower-risk groups.
Regardless of whether someone finds these specific claims credible or not, what's the takeaway lesson for our deep dive?
The lesson is about dealing with opacity and potentially compromised information systems. When you encounter claims that suggest major systems, financial, governmental, scientific, might be operating with hidden agendas or based on flawed premises, it forces an extreme level of critical thinking.
You can't just trust the label or the authority.
You can't. You have to try and verify the data behind the data. You have to question the source, question the funding, question the consensus. It highlights that shortcuts, while necessary, are inherently risky in environments where information itself might be contested or manipulated, like we saw with the AAA ratings on junk CDOs.
Wow, okay. What a journey. We've gone from like the power of a single minute of reading, changing your identity,
All the way through the mechanics of BRRR investing, calculating rehab costs.
to the history of suburban segregation driven by FHA policy.
And finally, to the fundamental challenge of navigating complex, opaque systems where even basic information might be disputed.
So pulling it all together, what's the final message for someone trying to master their field, especially real estate?
I think the core message from synthesizing all these sources is
Yeah.
you absolutely have to move beyond just dealing in the commodity. Stop thinking of yourself as just selling a house or just doing a deal.
Become the guide.
Become the expert guide. Master your inner game, your habits, your time, your mindset. Master the specific mechanics of your chosen strategy, like BRRRR. Know the numbers cold. And understand the broader context, the history, the financial systems, the potential pitfalls and opacities.
It's about building that deep, multifaceted expertise.
Exactly. That's what separates the commodity from the true expert, the trusted advisor. That's how you gain the edge.
So we leave a listener with a final thought. The sources consistently paint a picture of systems, real estate, finance, information that are often complex, maybe risky, sometimes designed with hidden intentions. One source even claims money is only an idea, and it's what is in your head that determines what is in your hands.
Right. So the provocation for you, the listener, is this. If the outside world is inevitably complex, often opaque, maybe even chaotic, how do you need to adjust your internal operating system? Your mindset, your focus, your skepticism, your commitment to verification. How do you tune your own thinking to not just navigate, but actually leverage that external complexity and opacity?
That feels like the starting point for true mastery. understanding that you need to build your own robust system to effectively engage with the often messy systems out there.
Precisely. That's where the real advantage lies.